Prince Thor stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the holographic display with barely concealed excitement. His golden armor reflected the blue light from the screens around him, making him look like a warrior from ancient legends. Behind him, his younger brother, Prince Zinvar, watched the same display with less enthusiasm. 3 ships, Thor said, his voice filled with amusement. Only 3 small vessels, and they dare to enter our territory. The Valorian Empire had ruled 300 star systems for over 2,000 years. Their military had never faced a real challenge. Every species they encountered either surrendered immediately or was crushed within days. The princes had been sent to the frontier to find new worlds to conquer, and now they had found something interesting. Commander Velthar, the senior military advisor, stepped forward. He was an older Valorian, with scars across his face from many battles. "My prince, we should observe them first. These vessels are unknown to our databases. We have no information about their species or capabilities." Thor waved his hand dismissively. "Look at their ships, Commander. They are tiny compared to our battle cruisers. Their weapons are primitive kinetic cannons. Their shields barely register on our sensors. This will be over quickly. Run." 1. Zinvar spoke quietly. "Brother, perhaps we should send a diplomatic message first. Father always says that wisdom comes before war." Thor laughed. "Father is not here. I am in command, and I see no threat from 3 small ships. Prepare the fleet for engagement. 12 battle cruisers should be more than enough." Inside the lead human scout ship, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, reviewing the sensor data. His ship, the Frontier Runner, was one of 3 vessels assigned to deep space reconnaissance. They had been mapping this sector for 6 months, carefully avoiding contact with the local empire that controlled this region. "Captain, we have 12 large vessels approaching," Lieutenant Amy Peterson announced from the tactical station. Her fingers moved across her console, analyzing the incoming ships. "They're definitely military. Power signatures suggest heavy weapons." Danny Wu, the chief engineer, looked up from his station. "Their technology is interesting, advanced for this region, but nothing we haven't seen before. I'd say they're about 200 years behind our current standard." Lisa Hayes, the ship's medic and communications officer, turned to Morrison. "Should I hail them?" Morrison nodded. "Yes. Standard first contact protocol. Let them know we're peaceful explorers." Lisa opened a channel and transmitted a message in multiple languages, including the Valorian tongue that their computers had deciphered weeks ago. "This is the Terran Federation scout ship Frontier Runner. We come in peace and mean no harm. We are conducting scientific research and will leave this area immediately, if requested." The response came quickly. Prince Thor's face appeared on the screen, his expression filled with arrogance. "Primitive creatures, you have entered Valorian space without permission. Your ships are now property of the Empire. Surrender immediately, or be destroyed." Morrison kept his face calm, but Amy saw a slight tightness around his eyes. "This is Captain Jake Morrison. We apologize for any intrusion. We will depart immediately. However, we cannot surrender our vessels. They remain property of the Terran Federation." Thor's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in anger. "You dare refuse a prince of Valoria? You will learn respect." He cut the transmission. Morrison opened a secure channel to the other 2 scout ships. "Ryan, Nicole, you both see what we're dealing with?" Captain Ryan Foster's voice came through from the Pathfinder. "Confirmed, Jake. Classic aggressive empire. They think we're easy targets." Captain Nicole Brooks of the Horizon's Edge added, "My sensors show they're powering up weapons. Looks like they're not interested in talking." Morrison took a deep breath. "All right. Protocol 7. Danny, prep the defensive systems. Amy, I want targeting solutions on all 12 ships, but weapons hold. Lisa, send a priority message back to command. Let them know We have first contact with a hostile empire. Message away, Lisa confirmed. Command will receive it in about 6 hours. The Valorian battlecruisers formed a sphere around the 3 human ships. They were massive vessels, each one 5 times larger than the small scout ships. Their hulls gleamed with advanced armor, and their weapons arrays bristled with cannons and missile pods. Kale Thor gave the order. Brilliant beams of energy lanced out from the Valorian ships, deliberately aimed to pass close to the human vessels. The display was meant to intimidate, to show overwhelming force. Morrison watched the beams pass by harmlessly. Danny, what's your analysis? Their energy weapons are powerful but inefficient, Danny replied. Lots of waste heat. I'd say they're brute-forcing their way through targets rather than using precision. We can work with that. Amy's hands moved across her console. Captain, they're charging main weapons. I think the warning shots are over. All ships, evasive pattern Delta, Morrison ordered calmly. Shields to maximum. Do not return fire yet. The Valorian battlecruisers unleashed their full firepower. Hundreds of energy beams and missiles streaked toward the 3 small human ships. On the Valorian flagship, Kale Thor smiled, expecting to see the enemy vessels vaporized. Instead, something impossible happened. The 3 human ships moved. They didn't just dodge, they danced through the incoming fire with precision that seemed impossible for vessels of their size. Their shields, which had appeared weak on Valorian sensors, suddenly flared with intense energy, deflecting shots that should have destroyed them. Morrison gripped his armrests as the frontier runner twisted through space. Amy, return fire. Target their shield generators only. Disable. Don't destroy. Aye, Captain. The 3 scout ships opened fire with their kinetic weapons. Simple, magnetic accelerators that launched solid projectiles at incredible speeds. The Valorians had dismissed these weapons as primitive, but they quickly learned their mistake. Amy's targeting computer identified weak points in the Valorian shields, places where the energy distribution was uneven. The kinetic rounds punched through these weak spots with devastating accuracy. 3 Valorian battlecruisers shuddered as their shields collapsed and their generator systems exploded. On the Valorian flagship, chaos erupted. What happened? Kale Thor shouted. How did they penetrate our shields? Commander Velthar's face had gone pale. My prince, their weapons found weak points we didn't know existed, and their movement patterns our targeting computers can't lock onto them. They're predicting our fire patterns and moving before we shoot. Zinvar grabbed his brother's arm. Brother, we should withdraw. Something is very wrong here. Kale Thor shook him off. No. We are Valorians. We do not retreat from inferior species. Send a message to the main armada. Request immediate reinforcement. These are just their scouts, their real military must be elsewhere. We'll crush them with numbers. Lisa intercepted the Valorian transmission and reported to Morrison. Captain, they're calling for help. Looks like 50 more ships. Morrison sighed. Send another message. Give them one more chance to back down. Lisa's voice carried across space to the Valorian fleet. This is your final warning. We are a forward reconnaissance unit of the Terran Federation. Withdraw now, or you will face consequences. We do not wish to harm you. Kale Thor heard the message and laughed bitterly. They think they're giving us warnings? Maintain attack formation. When reinforcements arrive, we'll teach these humans the price of arrogance. But on the bridge of the frontier runner, Morrison and his crew knew the truth. The Valorians had just made the biggest mistake of their civilization's history. They had attacked humanity's scouts, and now they would face the consequences. The space around Epsilon 7 lit up like a deadly fireworks display. The remaining 9 Valorian battlecruisers had regrouped and were unleashing everything they had at the 3 human scout ships. Prince Kale Thor watched from his command throne, his golden armor now seeming less brilliant under the red emergency lights that had begun flashing across his bridge. Concentrate fire on the lead vessel, Kale Thor ordered. overwhelmed their shields with sustained bombardment. 6 battle cruisers focused their weapons on the frontier runner. Energy beams hot enough to melt through steel converged on Jake Morrison's ship from multiple angles. There should have been no escape. The math was simple. No vessel that small could survive that much firepower. Danny Wu's fingers flew across his engineering console, redirecting power from non-essential systems, routing auxiliary power to forward shields. He glanced at his readouts and grinned. Captain, their weapons have a 0.3-second charge cycle between volleys. I can redistribute our shield energy to match their firing pattern. Morrison understood immediately. Do it. The frontier runner's shields flickered and shifted in perfect rhythm with the incoming fire. Each time the Valorian weapons struck, the shields were at maximum strength at exactly that spot. Between volleys, the shields cycled power to other sections, conserving energy. It looked like magic to the Valorians. But it was simply superior technology combined with clever engineering. Amy Peterson coordinated with the other 2 scout ships through their quantum-encrypted communication system. On normal radio, there would be a slight delay between messages, but the quantum link was instantaneous, allowing the 3 captains to coordinate as if they shared one mind. Ryan, swing around to mark 7-4, Morrison said calmly, while his ship twisted through enemy fire. Nicole, I need you to draw fire from the upper group. Copy that, Ryan Foster replied from the Pathfinder. His ship accelerated upward, presenting itself as an easier target. 3 Valorian battlecruisers took the bait and shifted their fire toward him. Nicole Brooks brought the Horizon's Edge into a steep dive that would have torn apart most ships from the structural stress. I've got your back, Ryan. Targeting their sensor arrays. Mant, the Horizon's Edge fired precise bursts from its kinetic cannons. Small projectiles, each no bigger than a coffee cup, slammed into the sensor domes of 2 Valorian warships. The damage wasn't catastrophic, but suddenly those ships were blind, relying on sensor data from other vessels. Prince Zinvar gripped the railing of the command platform. Brother, look at how they move. Those ships are coordinating perfectly. There's no communication lag. How is that possible? Commander Velthar pulled up tactical displays. My prince, I've been analyzing their movement patterns. They're not just reacting to our attacks. They're predicting them. Watch they begin evasive maneuvers 0.2 seconds before we fire. Kyle Thor's face twisted in frustration. Impossible. They would need to read our minds to do that. Not minds, Velthar said quietly. But they're clearly reading our targeting computers. They must be intercepting our electronic systems somehow. He was right. Amy's console was filled with data streaming directly from the Valorian ships. The humans had cracked their encryption within the first 5 minutes of combat. Every targeting solution, every weapons charge, every command, the scouts could see it all. They're preparing another missile barrage, Amy announced. 48 missiles, targeting all 3 of us. Countermeasures ready, Danny said. But Captain, I've got a better idea. Request permission to use the graviton array. Morrison hesitated. The graviton array was one of their more advanced systems technology that the Valorians clearly didn't possess. Using it would reveal more of humanity's capabilities, but they had already shown quite a bit, and the Valorian reinforcements would arrive soon anyway. Permission granted. Show them what we can do. The Valorian missiles streaked through space, each one packed with enough explosive power to level a city. They accelerated toward the scout ships, their guidance systems locked on target. Then something strange happened. The missiles began to curve away from their targets, pulled off course by an invisible force. The Pathfinder had activated its graviton array, creating localized gravity wells that bent space itself. The missiles, following the curvature of space-time, spiraled away from the human ships and harmlessly detonated in empty space. On the Valorian flagship, alarms blared. Prince Kyle Thor, a tactical officer, called out, "They're manipulating gravity itself. This technology, we have theories about it, but we've never seen it in practice." Kyle Thor slammed his fist on his armrest. I don't care how advanced their technology is. There's still only 3 ships. Where are our reinforcements? Kyle Thor. Arriving now, my prince, Velthar reported. 50 Valorian warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system. They were the pride of the Empire's military heavy cruisers, battleships, and carrier vessels. Their appearance should have ended any debate about who would win this fight. Lisa Hayes monitored the new arrivals and reported to Morrison. Captain, 50 more ships just arrived. We're now facing 62 enemy vessels total. Morrison's expression didn't change. Have they responded to any of our withdrawal offers? Negative. They're powering up weapons and moving to surround us. Morrison opened the 3-way channel with his fellow captains. Ryan, Nicole, opinions? Ryan Foster's voice was steady. We've given them multiple chances. They've chosen aggression every time. At this point, we're justified in defending ourselves. Nicole Brooks added, Command will want as much data as possible about their military capabilities. We should continue engagement until the fleet arrives. Agreed, Morrison said. He opened a channel to the entire Valorian fleet. Attention, Valorian vessels. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran Federation. You are currently attacking peaceful reconnaissance ships. We have the ability to destroy you, but we choose restraint. For the last time, withdraw, and this can end without further conflict. Prince Kael Thor's face appeared on the screen again, but now he looked less confident. The loss of 3 battlecruisers and the scout's impossible defense had shaken him. Still, pride kept him from backing down. You speak of destroying us? Kael Thor said, trying to sound commanding. You have 3 small ships. I have 62 warships. Your courage is admirable, but your judgment is flawed. Surrender now, and I will spare your lives. Morrison shook his head slowly. You still don't understand. We're not their military. We're scouts. Our job is to explore and gather information. The fact that we've defended ourselves against your entire fleet should tell you something. It tells me that you have advanced technology. Kael Thor replied. But technology alone doesn't win wars. Numbers matter. Skill matters. And we have both. He cut the transmission and turned to his fleet. All ships, attack formation Theta. Concentrate fire. I want those ships destroyed. 62 warships moved into position and opened fire simultaneously. The space around the 3 human scouts became a death trap of energy beams, missiles, and particle weapons. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Danny Wu rerouted power so fast his console sparked. Shields at maximum. Cycling through. Defensive patterns. Amy's hands never stopped moving. Calculating firing solutions. We can't take them all at once. We need to thin their numbers. The 3 scout ships moved as one unit, their coordination perfect. They flew through the storm of weapons fire. Their shields flaring but holding. Their return fire was surgical, each shot carefully aimed at specific weak points on specific ships. The Frontier Runner fired a burst that took out the shield generator on a Valorian cruiser. The Pathfinder followed up by destroying the cruiser's engine array, leaving it dead in space. The Horizon's Edge targeted another ship's weapon systems, disabling its ability to fire. Within 10 minutes of sustained combat, 8 more Valorian ships were disabled or destroyed. The scouts hadn't lost a single shield generator. Zinvar grabbed his brother's shoulder. Brother, please. This is madness. They're not even slowing down. Our ships are falling, and they haven't taken any real damage. We need to withdraw and report this to Father. Kael Thor's face had gone pale. He stared at the tactical display showing his ships being systematically taken apart by 3 vessels that should have been easy targets. His pride warred with his survival instinct. Brother, Zinvar pressed. If these are their scouts, what are their warships like? That question hung in the air like a death sentence. Commander Velthar stepped forward. My prince, I must speak plainly. We are outmatched. Every exchange costs us ships, while they take no losses. If we continue, we will lose the entire fleet. Kael Thor opened his mouth to give the retreat order, but Danny Wu interrupted with an announcement across all Valorian frequencies. Attention Valorian fleet. Our main battle fleet has been notified of your attack. They will arrive in approximately 40 minutes. You may want to consider your options carefully. The message was the final blow to Valorian confidence. Across 62 ships, crew members looked at each other with growing fear. If 3 scouts could do this, what would an entire fleet do to them? But Prince Kael Thor's pride would not let him surrender. He would face whatever came, because retreating now would mean admitting that the mighty Valorian Empire had been defeated by scouts. That admission was something he could not make. Maintain attack, he ordered, his voice hollow. We do not flee. The battle had been raging for 30 minutes, and the space around Epsilon 7 was littered with debris from destroyed Valorian warships. 18 ships were now either disabled or destroyed, their hulls torn open by precise kinetic strikes. The 3 human scout ships continued to weave through the enemy formation, untouched except for some minor shield fluctuations. Inside the Frontier Runner, Jake Morrison reviewed the tactical situation with growing concern not for his own ship, but for what would happen when the main fleet arrived. The Valorians had been given every chance to withdraw, and they had chosen violence every single time. Danny, how are our systems holding up? Morrison asked. Danny Wu wiped sweat from his forehead. Shield generators at 70% efficiency. We can maintain this level of combat for another 2 hours easily. Weapon systems are fine. We've only used about 30% of our ammunition. The kinetic rounds are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Amy Peterson highlighted 3 Valorian battleships on her display. Captain, those 3 ships are moving into position for a planetary bombardment formation. I think they're going to try using their heavy weapons on us. Morrison understood immediately. Planetary bombardment cannons were designed to destroy cities and fortifications from orbit. They were massive, powerful, and incredibly slow to aim. Against moving targets in space, they were nearly useless. But desperation made people try foolish things. Let them try, Morrison said. Amy, be ready to plot an evasion course the moment they begin charging those weapons. Prince Kael Thor watched as his tactical officers prepared the bombardment cannons. Commander Velthar stood beside him, his expression grim. My prince, those weapons are not designed for ship-to-ship combat. The charge time alone gives the enemy 8 seconds to move out of range. I am aware, Kael Thor snapped, but their power output is triple that of our standard weapons. If we can land even 1 hit, it will penetrate their shields. Zinvar spoke quietly from his position near the back of the bridge. And if we miss, we waste energy and show them another weakness. Reader Waith, we waste energy. Zinvar spoke quietly. Kael Thor ignored his brother and gave the order. Fire when ready. The 3 Valorian battleships charged their massive cannons. Energy readings spiked as they drew power from their main reactors. The cannons glowed with barely contained power, building to a devastating release. Amy's console beeped. They're charging. 8 seconds until... I see it, Morrison interrupted. He had been watching the enemy ships closely. Plot evasion course on my mark. He counted down silently, watching the energy build up. Now, the Frontier Runner suddenly accelerated at an angle that would have crushed a human crew if not for the inertial dampeners. The ship moved out of the firing path just as 3 massive energy beams lanced through the space where it had been moments before. Ryan Foster's Pathfinder and Nicole Brooks' Horizon's Edge executed similar maneuvers, easily avoiding the slow, predictable weapons. The 3 beams continued into empty space, their energy wasted. Told you, Velthar muttered under his breath. But Kael Thor wasn't listening. He was staring at his sensor display with growing horror. His tactical officer had just shown him something impossible. What do you mean they're transmitting? The officer's hands shook as he manipulated the controls. My prince, those 3 ships have been broadcasting continuously since the battle began. They're sending massive amounts of data back toward their space. What kind of data? Everything. Our ship designs, our weapons capabilities, our tactics, our weaknesses. Every scan, every attack pattern, every communication, they're recording all of it and sending it home. Commander Velthar felt ice form in his stomach. They're not trying to defeat us. They're studying us. Learning everything about our military, so that when their real fleet arrives, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone on the bridge understood the implications. The Valorian Empire had just given humanity a complete tactical analysis of their military capabilities. Every future battle would be fought against an enemy that knew every Valorian weakness. Zinvar stepped forward, his voice urgent. Brother, we must stop this battle immediately. Every second we fight gives them more information. We need to withdraw and warn Father. For the first time since the battle began, K.L. Thor hesitated. His pride had led them into this disaster, but continuing might doom the entire empire. He opened his mouth to give the retreat order. Then Amy Peterson made an announcement that changed everything. Attention Valorian fleet. Our main battle group has arrived at the edge of this system. You now have two choices. Surrender or be destroyed. Choose quickly. Apps. Our bases. On every Valorian ship, sensor officers suddenly shouted warnings. 50 new contacts had appeared at the system's edge, having dropped out of hyperspace simultaneously. Long-range sensors struggled to get clear readings at this distance, but what they showed made seasoned warriors feel fear for the first time in their lives. The 50 human warships were enormous. Each one dwarfed the largest Valorian battleship. Their power signatures were so high that Valorian sensors initially registered them as small stars. These weren't scouts or exploration vessels. These were warships built for one purpose: overwhelming force. Morrison opened a private channel to the other scout captains. Fleet Command is requesting a final assessment. Are the Valorians likely to surrender? Nicole Brooks checked her displays. Negative. Their prince hasn't shown any sign of backing down. Pride seems to be overriding survival instinct. Ryan Foster added, I've been monitoring their internal communications. The prince knows he should retreat, but he's afraid of the dishonor. His culture values strength and conquest. Backing down from what they perceive as an inferior species would destroy his reputation. Morrison sighed. He had dealt with proud warrior cultures before. They often had to be shown overwhelming force before they would accept reality. Understood. Stand by for fleet arrival. Prince Kael Thor stared at the holographic display, showing the 50 human warships. They weren't moving, weren't attacking. They were just waiting at the edge of the system like predators watching wounded prey. The psychological effect was devastating. Get me detailed scans, Kael Thor ordered, his voice cracking slightly. The sensor officer worked frantically, trying to pierce through the strange interference that surrounded the human fleet. Finally, he got a partial reading, and immediately wished he hadn't. My prince, preliminary scans indicate each of those vessels has shield strength equal to 20 of our battle cruisers. Their weapons systems are. I can't get a clear reading. The energy signatures are beyond our measurement capabilities. What does that mean? Kael Thor demanded. Commander Velthar answered grimly. It means their weapons are so powerful that our sensors think they're looking at reactor cores instead of cannons. A new voice suddenly filled every bridge in the Valorian fleet. It was calm, authoritative, and absolutely confident. Prince Kael Thor of the Valorian Empire. This is Admiral Chris Martinez of the Terran Federation Navy. You have attacked a peaceful reconnaissance mission, despite multiple warnings and opportunities to withdraw. You have demonstrated aggressive intent and disregard for civilized conduct. By the authority granted to me by the Terran Federation, you and your forces are hereby ordered to stand down and prepare to face trial for acts of aggression. Kael Thor's face went purple with rage. Trial? You dare speak to a prince of Valoria about trials? Martinez's response was ice cold. Your rank is meaningless to us. You attacked Federation vessels without provocation. You rejected diplomatic solutions. You continued attacking even after we demonstrated superior capabilities. These are the actions of a war criminal, not a prince. Power down your weapons immediately, or we will power them down for you." The bridge was silent except for the hum of equipment and the quiet beeping of sensors. Every Valorian officer waited to see what their prince would do. Would he surrender? Would he order a retreat? Or would his pride lead them to destruction? Kael Thor looked at his brother, then at Commander Velthar, then at the display showing the 3 small scout ships that had humiliated his fleet. Finally, he looked at the 50 massive warships waiting in the distance. His hands clenched into fists. "We are Valorians. We bow to no one." He turned to his weapons officer. "All ships. Full assault. Target those 50 ships. If we're going to die, we'll die fighting." Zinvar grabbed his brother's arm desperately. "Brother, no. This is suicide." Kael Thor shook him off. "Then it's suicide, with honor. I will not surrender to primitives." Commander Velthar closed his eyes. He had served the Empire for 40 years, fought in a dozen campaigns, and survived countless battles. He knew with absolute certainty that he would not survive the next 10 minutes. Morrison received confirmation that the Valorian fleet was charging weapons. "Admiral Martinez, they're preparing to attack your position." Martinez's voice carried a hint of sadness. "Confirmed, Captain Morrison. I really hoped they would choose differently. All fleet units, prepare for defensive engagement. Remember, disable, don't destroy. We want prisoners for trial, not corpses for graves." The Valorian fleet, 44 ships, still combat-capable, began their final attack. They accelerated toward the 50 human warships, weapons charging, crews shouting battle cries that had echoed through 300 conquered worlds. The human fleet waited calmly, motionless in space, like a wall of steel and fire waiting for waves to break against it. Inside the Frontier Runner, Jake Morrison watched the beginning of the end. His scouts had given the Valorians every chance, every warning, every opportunity to choose peace. They had chosen war instead. Now they would learn what war with humanity truly meant. The Valorian fleet rushed toward the human warships, like an angry swarm of insects attacking a mountain. 44 ships pushed their engines to maximum power, closing the distance at speeds that would have impressed most civilizations. Their weapons charged, ready to unleash destruction the moment they came into range. Admiral Chris Martinez stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destiny's Call. His crew worked quietly at their stations, no panic or stress visible despite the approaching enemy fleet. They had trained for this scenario dozens of times. An aggressive empire making a foolish final stand was almost predictable. "Tactical. What's their time to weapons range?" Martinez asked calmly. A young officer named Kyle Watson checked his display. 3 minutes at current speed. "Admiral, they're not even trying to use evasive patterns. It's a straight charge. Money nines. AR. They're desperate," Martinez observed. "Desperation makes people predictable. Helm. All ships maintain current position. Weapons. Charge defensive systems only. I want knockout shots, not kill shots." The weapons officer, a woman named Beth Cooper, acknowledged the order. "Aye, Admiral. Loading non-lethal rounds. Targeting engines and weapons systems only." Martinez opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships. You know your orders. These people made bad choices, but they don't deserve to die for following foolish leaders. Disable and capture. Make every shot count." 50 acknowledgements came back simultaneously. The human fleet was ready. Prince Kael Thor watched the distance close between his fleet and the humans. 2 minutes until weapons range. His hands gripped the arms of his command throne so tightly his knuckles had turned white beneath his golden armor. "All weapons, target their lead ship," he ordered. "Concentrate our fire. If we can destroy their flagship, perhaps we can scatter their fleet." Commander Velthar knew it was pointless, but he relayed the orders anyway. What else could he do? They were committed now. Running would accomplish nothing. Those human ships could clearly catch them if they wanted to. Zinvar stood at his brother's side, his face pale but determined. If they were going to die, at least they would die together. Brother, I want you to know. Don't, Kael'thor interrupted. Save your words. For after the battle. There won't be an after, Zinvar said quietly. But he fell silent, watching the tactical display count down the distance. 1 minute to weapons range. On the Frontier Runner, Jake Morrison and his crew had moved to a safe distance. They were observers now, watching what would happen when an arrogant empire met humanity's actual military force. I almost feel sorry for them, Lisa Hayes said softly. Amy Peterson shook her head. We gave them so many chances. We warned them. We tried diplomacy. They chose this. Danny Wu pulled up sensor readings of the human fleet. Captain, look at this. The fleet isn't even using full power yet. They're at about 20% reactor output. This is going to be over in seconds. Morrison nodded grimly. That's the point. Admiral Martinez wants to show them the difference between our capabilities and theirs. It's a lesson the Valorian Empire needs to learn. 30 seconds to weapons range. The Valorian ships prepared to fire. Every weapon was charged. Every crew member ready. They would die fighting, but they would make the humans pay for their victory. Or so they believed. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. The Valorian fleet opened fire. Hundreds of energy beams and thousands of missiles erupted from their ships, filling space with deadly light. It was the most concentrated barrage they had ever launched. Enough firepower to destroy a small planet. The human fleet's shields barely flickered. Kyle Watson reported calmly. Shields at 98%, Admiral. No damage to any vessels. Martinez nodded. Return fire. Disable them. The human fleet fired. It wasn't a barrage. It wasn't a spray of weapons hoping to overwhelm defenses. It was surgical precision. On a massive scale. 50 warships fired 50 shots, and 44 Valorian vessels suddenly went dark. On the Valorian flagship, every system failed simultaneously. Lights went out. Weapons died. Engines stopped. The ship was still intact, its hull undamaged, but it was completely powerless. In 1 second, the entire Valorian fleet had been neutralized. What happened? Kael'thor shouted into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting red shadows across the bridge. Damage report. A technical officer checked his backup systems. My prince. I don't understand. We're not damaged. Our systems are just off, like someone flipped a switch and turned off our entire ship. Commander Velthar understood before anyone else. They hit us with electromagnetic pulse weapons. Military grade. Targeted EMP that shut down our electronics without destroying our ships. But our systems are shielded against EMP, the technical officer protested. Against EMP weapons of our technology level, Velthar corrected. Their weapons went through our shielding, like it wasn't even there. Kael'thor stumbled to the viewport and looked out at his fleet. 44 ships drifted in space, all dark, all helpless. And the 50 human warships hadn't even moved from their position. They had swatted aside the Valorian fleet, like an adult, brushing away a child's hand. How long until systems restore? Kael'thor asked, his voice hollow. 6 hours, the technical officer replied. Maybe 8. If they let us restore them, at all. They didn't have to wait long to find out. Small craft began launching from the human warships. Boarding shuttles. Heading for every disabled Valorian vessel. Within 20 minutes, armed human soldiers would be on every bridge, taking control of every ship. Admiral Martinez stood before the holographic display showing the entire Valorian fleet captured without a single death on either side. It had been perfect exactly as planned. His tactical officer looked up from her console. Admiral, all boarding teams report successful entry. No resistance. The Valorians are too shocked to fight back. Understood. Begin the process of identifying command personnel. I want all princes, commanders, and tactical officers prepared for transport to the Destiny's Call within 2 hours. On the Valorian flagship, human soldiers in advanced armor moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency. They weren't brutal or cruel, but they were absolutely professional. Valorian crew members were secured, their weapons taken, and they were moved to holding areas without violence. Lieutenant Sam Parker led the team onto the bridge. He saw the two princes immediately. Their golden armor made them easy to identify. Prince Kael Thor and Prince Zinvar, I presume? Kael Thor drew his ceremonial sword, a beautiful weapon that had been passed down through his family for generations. I am a prince of Valoria. I will not surrender. 2. Sam's sidearm fired once. A stun round hit Kael Thor in the chest, and the prince collapsed, unconscious. The sword clattered to the floor. Sam looked at Zinvar, who slowly raised his hands in surrender. That was easier, Sam said. He keyed his radio. Bridge secured. Princes in custody. Prince Kael Thor required stunning. Prince Zinvar surrendered peacefully. Acknowledged, came the response. Prepare them for transport. 6 hours later, Prince Kael Thor woke up in a cell. Not a torture chamber or a dungeon, but a clean, well-lit room with a bed, a desk, and a small bathroom. The walls were clear force fields, showing a corridor outside where human guards stood watch. He sat up slowly, his chest aching from where the stun round had hit him. Zinvar was in the cell across the corridor. He looked at his brother with sad eyes. You're awake. Good. We're being held on their flagship. We're scheduled to face trial in 1 hour. Trial? Kael Thor's laugh was bitter. No joke, a new voice said. Jake Morrison stepped into view outside Kael Thor's cell. You attacked peaceful vessels. You rejected diplomatic solutions. You continued attacking despite clear warnings. In any civilized legal system, those are crimes. Kael Thor rushed to the force field, stopping just before touching it. We are warriors. We were defending our territory. Morrison shook his head. You were attacking unarmed scouts in neutral space. There's a difference. But you'll have a chance to present your case at trial. I demand to speak with Admiral Martinez, Kael Thor said. You'll speak with him at the trial. Until then, I suggest you prepare your defense. Or don't. Honestly, the outcome is already decided. You attacked us. We have all the evidence we need. The trial is more about determining the appropriate punishment. Morrison walked away, leaving the princes in their cells. Kael Thor sat down on his bed, his mind racing. How had it come to this? His fleet destroyed, his crew captured, himself a prisoner, and the worst part was knowing that Morrison was right. They had attacked first. They had rejected peace. The humans had every legal right to put them on trial. When the hour passed, guards came to escort the princes to the trial chamber. It was a large room with seats for observers, a judicial bench where Admiral Martinez sat with 2 other senior officers, and a central area where the accused would stand. Commander Velthar was already there, along with a dozen other senior Valorian officers. All of them looked defeated, their proud bearing crushed by the reality of their situation. Martinez looked at the assembled Valorians. This tribunal is now in session. Prince Kael Thor and Prince Zinvar of the Valorian Empire, you are charged with attacking peaceful Federation vessels without provocation, continuing hostilities despite multiple opportunities for peaceful resolution, and endangering your own crews through reckless military action. How do you plead? Kael Thor wanted to shout defiance, to claim justification, to demand his rights as a prince. But looking at Martinez's calm, serious face, he knew it would accomplish nothing. The humans had won completely. The Valorian Empire's entire military doctrine had been proven worthless in less than an hour of actual combat. What does it matter how we plead? Kael Thor asked quietly. You've already decided our fate. Martinez shook his head. No, Prince Kael Thor. Your actions decided your fate. This trial is simply the formal acknowledgement of consequences you brought upon yourself. The trial lasted 3 hours. Though it felt like an eternity to Prince Kael Thor, evidence was presented in methodical detail, every communication, every sensor reading, every warning ignored. The humans had recorded everything, and they played it back for all to see. Admiral Martinez called Jake Morrison to testify. The scout captain stood before the tribunal and calmly described the sequence of events. His tone wasn't angry or accusatory. He simply stated facts, letting the evidence speak for itself. "Captain Morrison," Martinez asked, "how many times did you attempt peaceful communication with the Valorian fleet?" "7 times, Admiral. The first contact when they approached us. Then once after they fired warning shots. 3 more times during the initial engagement. Once before their reinforcements arrived, and a final warning after the reinforcements appeared." "And how did Prince Kael Thor respond to these attempts?" "He rejected all diplomatic options. He demanded our surrender despite having no legal authority to do so. When we refused surrender, but offered to depart peacefully, he ordered his fleet to open fire." Martinez nodded. "Thank you, Captain. You may step down." Then came something that shocked every Valorian in the room. The humans presented information about the Valorian Empire itself, detailed records going back 20 years. A human intelligence officer named Greg Harris stood and activated a holographic display. "The Terran Federation has been monitoring the Valorian Empire since first detecting their presence in this sector. We have documented 17 wars of conquest, 43 planetary occupations, and the subjugation of 11 different intelligent species." Images appeared in the display: worlds burning, cities destroyed, populations enslaved, all of it documented with dates, locations, and evidence. Prince Zinvar felt sick. He had known his empire conquered other worlds, but seeing it presented this way made it seem different, darker. The Valorian people had always been taught that they brought order and civilization to lesser species. But the humans showed a different story. One of brutality and oppression. "Where did you get this information?" Kael Thor demanded. "You said your scouts only arrived here 6 months ago." Admiral Martinez answered. "Our scouts arrived here 6 months ago, but we've had observation posts in this sector for 2 decades. We've been watching your empire the entire time, waiting to see if you would change your ways. You didn't." The weight of that revelation crushed Kael Thor. The mighty Valorian Empire had been watched by the humans for 20 years, and they never knew. While Valoria conquered 300 systems and believed themselves powerful, humanity had been observing them like scientists studying aggressive insects. "If you've been watching us for 20 years, Velthar spoke up, why didn't you intervene before? Why let us conquer those worlds?" Martinez's expression became grave. "Because the Terran Federation follows strict rules about interference. We don't have the right to control other civilizations' development, even when we disagree with their choices. We watch. We document. We prepare. But we don't act unless directly provoked." "And we provoked you," Zinvar said quietly. "Yes, you attacked our peaceful scouts without cause. That crossed the line from observation to action." Jake Morrison stepped forward again. "If I may, Admiral, I'd like the princes to understand something important." "Proceed, Captain." Morrison looked directly at Kael Thor. "Prince, you asked earlier if we were their scouts or their military. The truth is, we're scouts. But in human culture, scouts aren't just explorers. We're the first line of contact with unknown civilizations. We're trained in diplomacy, combat, and assessment. Our job is to determine whether a species is peaceful or hostile." "You determined we were hostile," Kael Thor said bitterly. "No. You determined that for us. We gave you every opportunity to prove otherwise. But let me tell you what you should really understand. The 3 scout ships you fought are 40 years old. They're reliable and well-maintained, but they're not cutting edge. The fleet that arrived to rescue us? Those ships are only 10 years old. And back in human space, we're already building the next generation. The implications hit Kael'thor like a physical blow. If outdated scouts could defeat his entire fleet, and modern warships could disable them without effort, what could humanity's newest technology do? Admiral Martinez called for the tribunal's judgment. The three judges conferred briefly, though everyone already knew what the verdict would be. When Martinez spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Prince Kael'thor, Prince Zinvar, and Commander Velthar, this tribunal finds you guilty of unprovoked aggression against Terran Federation vessels. Under the laws of civilized warfare, you are subject to punishment. However, the Federation believes in proportional response and the possibility of redemption. He stood and walked to face them directly. Here is your sentence. You will be returned to your empire. But you will deliver a message to your emperor and your people. The Terran Federation hereby declares that the Valorian Empire's military capability will be dismantled. Every conquered world will be given the choice of independence, or joining a new commonwealth based on voluntary cooperation rather than force. Kael'thor's eyes widened. You're going to destroy our entire empire? No. We're going to dismantle your war machine. Your people can keep their culture, their government, their way of life. But you will no longer be permitted to conquer and oppress other species. Federation observers will monitor your compliance. If you resist, you will face the full force of Federation military action. And if we comply? Zinvar asked. Then, in time, you may even join the Federation as equal members. But first, you must prove you can exist peacefully with your neighbors. The tribunal was dismissed. The princes were returned to their cells to await transport back to Valorian space. But Kael'thor requested one more meeting with Captain Morrison. Jake Morrison sat across from the prince in a small meeting room. Two guards stood nearby, but they gave the men some space to talk privately. Why? Kael'thor asked. Why didn't you just destroy us? You had the power. You had the justification. Why go through all this trouble of trials and tribunals? Morrison leaned back in his chair. Because that's what the old Valorian Empire would do. Destroy the enemy. Crush the opposition. We're better than that. Are you? Kael'thor's voice was harsh. Or are you just more subtle in your conquest? You're still taking apart our empire. Troop, we're taking apart your military aggression, Morrison corrected. There's a difference. Prince, can I tell you about human history? Kael'thor nodded, curious despite himself. Humans nearly destroyed ourselves 3 times in our past. World wars, nuclear weapons, environmental collapse. Each time, we came close to extinction. We survived not because we were the strongest or the most aggressive, but because we learned to cooperate. We learned that strength, without wisdom, leads to destruction. Morrison pulled up a holographic image showing Earth from space. This is our homeworld. Billions of people, from hundreds of cultures, all living together. It wasn't easy. It took centuries of war and suffering to learn how to coexist. But we did it. And when we went to the stars, we took that lesson with us. So you think you can teach us to be like you? Kael'thor said. No. We think you can learn to be the best version of yourselves. The Valorian culture has many admirable qualities. Honor, loyalty, discipline, but you've let pride and aggression overshadow those virtues. We're giving you a chance to find balance. Morrison stood to leave. You'll be released tomorrow and sent home in one of your own ships. Tell your father what happened here. Tell him the truth. The age of conquest is over for Valoria. The age of cooperation can begin, if you choose it. After Morrison left, Kael'thor sat in silence for a long time. Everything he had believed about strength and power had been proven wrong. The Valorian Empire had conquered 300 worlds and thought themselves mighty. But the Terran Federation controlled 12,000 worlds and had stayed hidden, watching, waiting. The next day, Prince Thor and his crew were loaded onto their repaired flagship. Human engineers had restored their systems, even upgraded some of their safety features. As they prepared to leave, Admiral Martinez sent a final message. "Safe travels, Prince Thor. Remember what you learned here. Tell your people the truth. The Terran Federation will be watching." The Valorian ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its defeated crew home. News of what happened would spread quickly. An entire fleet defeated by 3 scouts, their princes captured and judged, their empire's future hanging in the balance. 5 years passed. Prince Zinvar stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city of Valoria. The city had changed. Where military academies once stood, now there were schools teaching medicine and engineering. Where weapons factories had dominated the skyline, research facilities now reached toward the stars. The Valorian Empire had become the Valorian Commonwealth. Conquered worlds had been freed, reparations paid, and a new government formed based on cooperation rather than domination. It had been painful. Many Valorians struggled with the loss of their military pride. But others, especially the younger generation, embraced the change. Zinvar now served as ambassador to the Terran Federation. He had spent years learning about human culture, human history, and human values. He represented his people in building a new relationship based on mutual respect. His brother Thor had chosen a different path. Unable to accept the changes, unable to live with the shame of his defeat, he had gone into voluntary exile. He lived alone on a distant world, forever haunted by the memory of attacking 3 human scouts and losing everything. Jake Morrison visited Zinvar occasionally. They had become something like friends over the years. On this visit, they sat together watching the sunset over the transformed city. "Do you ever regret it?" Morrison asked. "The old ways. I mean," Zinvar thought carefully before answering. "Sometimes I miss the certainty we had, the belief that we were strong and right. But then I look at what we've become and realize we're stronger now than we ever were." "How so?" "Before, we were strong because we could destroy. Now we're strong because we can build. Before, other species feared us. Now they respect us. That's real power, Captain Morrison. Not the kind that comes from weapons, but the kind that comes from being worthy of respect." Morrison smiled. "Your brother couldn't see that." "No." Thor's pride was too great. He couldn't accept that we had been wrong. So he chose to live in the past, rather than build the future. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. In orbit above them, human and Valorian ships worked together on a joint research station. Young Valorians trained alongside human instructors, learning not how to conquer, but how to explore and discover. The story of that day when an arrogant prince attacked 3 human scouts and lost everything became legend across multiple species. It was told as a warning about pride and aggression, but it was also told as a story of redemption and transformation. The Valorian Commonwealth never forgot the lesson they learned. When you fight humanity's scouts and lose, you're given a choice. Accept the consequences with humility and grow, or cling to pride and fade into history. Prince Zinvar chose growth. The Valorian people followed his example, and though the memory of that humiliating defeat would never fade, it became the foundation for something better. A civilization that had learned to build instead of destroy, to cooperate instead of conquer, to respect instead of dominate. The 3 scout ships that started it all, the Frontier Runner, the Pathfinder, and the Horizon's Edge, continued their missions, exploring unknown space and making first contact with new species. They carried with them the hopes of the Federation that every encounter would end peacefully, but they also carried the weapons and training to defend themselves if necessary, because sometimes the only way to teach peace to an aggressive empire was to show them the futility of war, and no one did that better than humanity's scouts.